afraid of the dark.
Strange new events have begun to occur at the Sherman Ranch. Mutilated cattle, nightlights, and eerie poltergeist activity. Learn the horrifying truth of this story. Hovering about 100 yards to his left, silhouetted against the pale white snow, Terry immediately hunkered down and quietly observed the strange object moving across the land. It resembled a slightly smaller, snub-nosed version of the F-117 Nighthawk, but he knew it couldn't be one of those because this thing was completely silent. It floated about 20 feet off the ground, defying gravity, with colored lights flitting over the snow as if searching for something. Terry watched it for around 15 minutes as it moved westward before turning back east. As Terry sat still in the cold, his arms began to go numb, and as he stretched his limbs, his joints cracked. In the deathly silence, the sound seemed impossibly loud, but in reality it was so insignificant that it wouldn't have been heard by anyone standing beyond 6 feet. Nevertheless, the lights on the strange craft suddenly went out. It stopped and turned in his direction. For a few tense moments, Terry's heart pounded in his chest as the object seemed to glare at him. But to his relief, it turned and silently floated off to the north, out of sight. As the new year came and the spring rains began to lash the ranch, the family started losing more cattle. However, now they began to reappear, sometimes dead from no apparent cause, other times extensively mutilated. The nature of these mutilations was bizarre. Huge chunks of flesh and skin were carved out of the animals, yet there was no blood. The wounds seemed to be cut with precision instruments, displaying an almost surgical quality, rather than the savage tearing of predators. The Shermans were beginning to feel the stress caused by these losses. Throughout 1995, the strange activity only intensified. Events took place that were frankly beyond bizarre. Lights appeared over the ranch almost every night. More poltergeist activity was experienced in the homestead. Black, featureless entities began to appear, looking in through the windows and later even entering the house and standing at the ends of beds. Strange sounds emanated from the ground, almost as if there were machinery or railroads operating beneath their feet. Their neighbors heard these sounds too. They also heard disembodied voices speaking in strange languages coming from the sky. One morning, Terry woke to find huge, cookie-cutter-like holes dug into his land with no resulting piles of earth anywhere to be seen. Somehow, hundreds of pounds of soil had been silently removed from his property in the dead of night. In addition to this, strange creatures were spotted walking across the land, from humanoids that resembled Bigfoot to bizarre canine hyena hybrids with razor-sharp claws that would attack their livestock. An invisible entity was often witnessed, not the being itself, but the effects of its presence. Livestock would part and move out of the way as if something big and unseen ran through the middle of the herd. Water in the canal would be displaced, as if large invisible feet were stomping through it. Another smaller creature was witnessed, shrouded in some sort of cloaking device, much like the alien entity from the movie Predator. Stationary orange lights were seen in the sky, different from the other ones Terry often witnessed moving in the distance. The first time he saw one of these anomalies, he was sitting out on his porch on a warm summer evening when something suddenly appeared in the sky, about a mile away. He'd been cleaning his rifle earlier in the day, and a high-powered scope just happened to be nearby. He grabbed it and viewed the object through the telescopic sight. What he saw left him sitting there, mouth agape. The orange object looked like some sort of portal, and at its center, he could see an opening. On the other side of that opening was a blue sky, even though the sun had long since set. In his mind, it looked like a gateway to another place. These anomalies became a frequent occurrence above the ranch, and Terry would later describe seeing odd-shaped craft entering and exiting these openings on several occasions. The most disturbing of all phenomena, though, were the orbs. They were not as common as the lights or portals, but when they did appear, they were far more obvious, zipping in and out of nearby trees and harassing the livestock. Most were about the size of a tennis ball and had a blood-red color, but occasionally larger blue ones would show up, and these were bad news. Nicknamed the Blue Meanies, these orbs could instill intense fear in those who got too close. Perhaps it was a certain vibrational signal they gave off which stimulated extreme anxiety. Terry and Gwen were never sure, but they feared the blue orbs more than anything else they had seen on the ranch. One evening, Terry was out on his porch again, observing the lights over his property as he often did when he spotted an ominous blue glow coming from the tree line in front of his house. He was immediately on guard as one of the blue orbs emerged from the thicket and slowly made its way towards him. 3 of his best hunting dogs sat by his side, and the moment they saw the orb, they began to growl and bark. Without even thinking about it, Terry set them loose, and they chased it back into the trees. Whatever fear it was able to stimulate in human beings did not seem to affect dogs, and Terry felt his spirits lift as he considered that a small battle had been won. But then, suddenly, out of the darkness came 3 pained yelps and then nothing. He waited for a couple of hours, but his dogs never returned. Far too scared to venture out and look for them, he waited until morning. He and his son went to search the copse of trees where he had last seen them. On the ground, they found 3 cauterized piles of flesh, smoldering in the cool morning air. This was all that was left of his dogs. This proved to be the last straw for the Sherman family. They had endured more than they could physically take over the last 2 years. They were not getting any sleep. The kids were doing poorly at school. Gwen had lost her job at a bank in town, and the whole family had taken to bunking in the same room because of the strange phenomena that were now regularly entering their household during the night. On top of this, they had lost 14 head of cattle, along with family pets, and were now on the verge of bankruptcy. Seeing those vaporized dogs, it was now becoming clear just how much danger they were in. Terry had previously contacted a local newspaper about the strange activity taking place on his ranch. Although roundly ridiculed, the story was picked up by other publications. By chance, it caught the attention of one Robert T. Bigelow, a billionaire businessman who had recently invested a significant amount of money in setting up a scientific team whose purpose was to investigate events of high strangeness. He offered to purchase the ranch from the Shermans, who were only too happy to accept. By July 1996, Terry and his family had vacated the property. Bigelow's team, the National Institute for Discovery Science NIDS, was ready to move in by September that same year and would remain at the ranch for nearly a decade, studying in detail various instances of bizarre phenomena. They would have their own stories to tell. What they encountered there was every bit as intriguing and downright terrifying as what the family had experienced. For the time being, at least, whatever had been tormenting the Shermans over the last 2 years was about to receive some unwelcome attention. It was about to come face to face with a fearless, highly equipped, and well-funded team of investigators who were well aware of its presence. The hunter was about to become the hunted.